Imagine this. A shady group pretending to be an HOA starts making life miserable for your child, targeting her at school. You think they'd back off once they realized who they were dealing with, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to my daughter, and they had no idea who her dad was until it was almost too late. It all started when a group of individuals began acting like they had authority, making demands and causing trouble for my daughter. They were pushing boundaries, thinking they could get away with anything. But what they didn't know was that they were messing with the wrong family. I'm the town's police chief, and I wasn't about to let anyone mess with my daughter, or anyone in this community, for that matter. As the situation escalated, I had to decide how far I was willing to go to protect my daughter from these fake HOA bullies. The tension was thick, and I knew things were about to get complicated. How would this all play out? Would they realize who they were up against before things got out of hand? You'll want to stay tuned, because what happened next is something I'll never forget. It all started when my daughter, Emily, came home one day looking upset. She had been singled out by a group of people who claimed they were from the local homeowners association, or HOA. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, Emily had been through her fair share of school drama before, but something about this felt different. They told her she was in violation of community rules she had never heard of. These so-called HOA members were demanding things like parking passes, fees, and even threatening to report her family to the town council if she didn't comply. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was just a misunderstanding or a scam. But as Emily shared more details, I started to realize this was more than just a nuisance. These people were determined and didn't seem like they were going to back off. I decided to look into it further. The more I dug, the more suspicious it all became. I couldn't find any official records on this supposed HOA group, and their demands didn't add up. They had no real authority. They were trying to intimidate my daughter into giving in. I knew I had to step in before things escalated further, but I had to play it smart. The last thing I wanted was for them to figure out who I really was before I had all the answers. Would they back off, or was this just the beginning? The more I looked into this fake HOA, the more that actions didn't sit right with me. They were moving fast, and they weren't just going after Emily. A couple of other kids in the school started mentioning similar encounters, strange people showing up, making demands, and threatening to get parents involved for the smallest infractions. It was clear this wasn't some random thing. They had a pattern. The only question was, what were they really after? The deeper I dug, the more I realized this wasn't just about enforcing non-existent rules, it was about control. These people didn't want to fix anything. They wanted to manipulate the community, intimidate people, and create fear. I started to wonder if they were part of a bigger scheme. Maybe they had some hidden agenda, something even darker that they didn't want anyone to figure out. I couldn't let my daughter get caught in the middle of it. But here's where things got complicated. Emily wasn't the only one feeling targeted. One of her friends, Lily, had been singled out as well. The more I spoke to the parents, the more it became clear these HOA members weren't just picking on kids. They were stirring up trouble in the entire neighborhood. Their reach was growing, and their influence seemed to be spreading. Some people were starting to fear them. I knew if I stepped in too soon, I risked tipping them off. But if I waited too long, who knew what kind of damage they could do? The clock was ticking, and the stakes were higher than I ever expected. Something told me this was just the beginning. As the days went by, the tension in our town only grew. Emily's anxiety kept getting worse. She had become more withdrawn, avoiding certain areas of the school where she knew the fake HOA members would be. Every time she saw someone who looked even remotely like one of them, she'd freeze. And I couldn't blame her. These people weren't just pushing boundaries anymore, they were bullying kids into submission. I knew I had to act, but I had to be careful. The last thing I wanted was for them to get wind of who I was and turn this into something worse. I tried to keep it quiet, pulling strings behind the scenes, asking around, digging deeper into their activities. But the more I learned, the more I realized this was bigger than just some rogue HOA members. They had connections, people in positions of power, hidden alliances. It was starting to feel like a web of corruption, and we were stuck in the middle of it. One night, as I was leaving the station after a long shift, I got a call from Emily. She was terrified. One of the fake HOA members had shown up at the house while my wife and I were both gone. They weren't just trying to intimidate her anymore. They were getting closer, pushing harder. My heart dropped. This was no longer just about my daughter. It was about everything we'd worked to protect. I couldn't wait any longer. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to confront them head-on. But as I drove toward the meeting spot I'd arranged, something felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap, and I had no idea who was behind it all. The air was thick with tension, and I was about to find out just how far this had gone, and whether I could stop it before it was too late. As I neared the meeting spot, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It was a quiet part of town, the kind of place where nothing ever happened. But the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My instincts were screaming at me to turn back, but I had to do this. My daughter had already been through too much. I pulled into the parking lot, a little off the beaten path, and turned off the engine. The silence was unnerving. I checked my phone. Nothing. No messages, no calls. Just a strange sense of waiting. I stepped out of the car, my boots crunching on the gravel, and as I walked toward the building, I noticed something I hadn't seen before, the faint outline of a figure watching me from behind a corner. My heart skipped a beat. Was this a trap? I approached cautiously, trying to stay in the shadows, but the figure was gone before I could get a clear look. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw another figure, a second one, moving toward me from the other side. They were closing in fast. I turned and tried to make my way back to the car, but that's when the real shock hit. A voice came from behind me, one I recognized immediately. It was the last person I expected to see, someone I had trusted, someone deeply involved in the town's inner workings. The very person I thought would be on my side was standing there, smirking. They knew everything, my job, my family, even my next move. They'd been pulling strings from the start, and now they were closing in for the final act. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just about protecting my daughter anymore. This was about exposing the people who'd been manipulating us all along. The stakes had just been raised, and now it felt like everyone had a hidden agenda. The game was about to change. I froze when I saw who was standing before me. It was Sheriff Jacobs, the very person I thought I could rely on to help shut down the fake HOA. He'd been a close friend, someone I had worked with for years, and yet here he was, standing in front of me, a smirk on his face, eyes gleaming with something I couldn't quite place. "You didn't think it was all just random, did you?" he said, his voice smooth, almost mocking. "You've been playing right into our hands this whole time." A cold wave washed over me. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but I had to think. My mind raced, trying to piece together how everything had been manipulated. It all made sense now. The targeted kids, the constant intimidation, the mysterious HOA, and now this. Sheriff Jacobs wasn't just a bystander. He had been a part of the plan all along, and I had been too blind to see it. "Why?" I managed to force out. He shrugged, almost casually. "You think this town is as peaceful as it seems. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes. People want control, and I'm just helping those who know how to get it. You've been didding around too much, playing the hero when you don't know who's really pulling the strings." I couldn't believe it. The sheriff, the one person I thought I could trust, was working with the fake HOA all along. They'd been creating chaos, taking control of the town in ways I never imagined. They didn't care about rules or community. They cared about power. Before I could respond, something shifted in his eyes. The calm confidence he had displayed cracked for just a moment, replaced by something more dangerous. That's when I saw the second surprise. The sheriff wasn't working alone. He had a partner, a high-ranking member of the town council, the one person I thought would be an ally in stopping this whole thing. I couldn't process it all. It was too much, too fast. But then, just as I started to step back, My phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced down. One of the parents from the school had just sent me an urgent message. It was a photo of Emily. She was standing in front of the school, looking confused and upset, surrounded by several members of the fake HOA. My heart skipped a beat. I knew exactly what was going on. They were moving in on her.